Hey there, guys. Welcome to week 7 of Dynamics and Simulation. Today, of course, we're getting into what are called, this thing in Maya called PaintFX. And I'm going to go through a lot of these issues that we're going to deal when we're learning about PaintFX and how it can do some pretty magical things, from creating trees to creating water to creating particles and grass and neon and so on. And we're going to talk about the different brushes that are available, how to use them, whether it be a tube or a branching-based structure, how to control behaviors such as wind or collisions with PaintFX, how they can actually create deflectors, which means, like, again, if you create like a field of grass, you can actually have a character's feet deflect and collide with that grass to actually push it away. And of course, converting to polygons so that it's no longer just a PaintFX controlled object that we've created or a thing, but rather it's now a polygonal, or we convert to polys, which means then we can texture it and do some much neater things than just that. Plus, it can render better. The project in class project 6, of course, is a neon sign. Now, of course, if you go down here and you find the PDF PaintFX tutorials neon sign, that is the actual tutorial I've written, which you can simply find here, which is, again, kind of a rehash of what we're talking about today. And again, creating with PaintFX. And it basically says, what is a PaintFX? PaintFX are brush-driven geometry builders that are spline or curve-based in their creation. So basically, you can draw curves and paths and actually have a PaintFX attached to it. So let's say you want to do a line of trees. You drag a curve using a PaintFX brush for a tree, drag it along the ground, and it will actually grow trees subsequently. These render independently from the default scene, not unlike hair or fur. And that's also why, again, we get to this idea of converting PaintFX to polygons, so they render and you get shadows and you get reflections and so on. They are fully dynamic and can be grown from the root, have wiggle or shake parameters. They can be blowing in the wind. They can be made alive so as to simulate real-world fields such as gravity, wind, etc. So again, that's why we talk about it in the dynamic simulation, is because it's got the real-world elements plugged into this. What type of effects are available? Well, we see here we've got some plants, trees, grass, and flowers. These, of course, are built using tubes with sprites and branching splitting from the root, okay, from the main tube. You could do object mesh, geometry-based PaintFX. These are things, everything from feathers, beads, there's foods and objects. And these are, of course, geometric approximations. They're not high-quality, high-polygon geometry. You can create clouds, smoke, water, and bubbles. And these are tube and circular geometry replacements. So what it's basically doing when you create PaintFX is you're creating a kind of following the normal. So you can either follow the path of the normal, and then it can create geometry around those normals or paths. And last but not least, which is why we're going to talk about it, is artistic PaintFX, such as neon, paint dabs, metal tubing, everything from barbed wire to string or yarn can be made as well. To make these PaintFX, we want to go into it used to be in the render menu, but now it's actually placed again in the effects menu. PaintFX, get brush. Actually, it might still be in render. We'll find out. And then we can open up that visor. Now, this is old news here, the visor. Last week I showed you where to get your fluid containers, and you actually would go to Fluids, get fluid. That actually opens that finder that actually allows you to choose amongst your PaintFX. So let me just jump up quickly here. Okay, and again, remember, once we're in Maya, we hit OK. We can expand our timeline here, make sure that we're doing our running man reel, and set a new project. Project window, new. And I'll just call this Neon for now, because that's what we get to, and give it its proper location, which of course is going to be placed into the in-class assignment Neon sign, and select, and accept. So now we basically have created a project folder for everything to go into. Now, like I said though, if we want to actually find it, let's see if it actually still exists in render. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see get brush anymore. So what we're going to have to do here is go to effects, in the fluids, or maybe it's in effects now. No? Okay, so let's just go to where we got get example. Okay? And you see here, that's where we were getting our fluid containers last week. What I'm going to go to here is I'm going to find PaintFX. You see it's right underneath modeling. And you can see here we've got all these different things that can create a paint effect. There's lightning, feathers, fibers, fire, flowers. And I'll just use the flowers here as just as an example here, because I can choose a flower. I'm going to choose this one called hyacinth. And you see it automatically converts to the paintbrush. Now you see if I move this paintbrush around, you're seeing I'm getting a little red kind of thing that represents the size of my brush. Now I can hold in B for brush and drag with my left mouse button. And you see if I drag now, it creates a PaintFX brush that represents the hyacinth. Let me go ahead and render it really quickly. And we're going to see here that currently, let's switch this over, software. And it says, warning, selecting region too small. Okay, let's try something there. Not really giving me what I'm after here. Okay, so let's use this example here, though, what we can do. Because remember, most of what we're creating here is a performance issue, not necessarily pretty pictures. So if I select on this, you see it gives me two things. It gets me a stroke for the shape hyacinth, and this is where I can do some cool things, like even go and animate along that path that I drew. So think about, you can create a paintbrush or a pencil that can draw something. You can grow ivy, like you see in a lot of movies where you see the ivy or the plants grow up the side of a building or something like that by keying this min-max clip. And then we get the actual brush speculation. See, so this is all the brush specs. And you can see I can control global scale. I can come in here and play around with twist. I can play around with the mesh, the shading, the texturing. I'll get all of this. I can even add glow, tubes, gaps. Okay, so I could go into a lot of different things here. See, it's got creation, growth, behavior. So I could add in a displacement or a turbulence, for example, like just adding, see it's currently off. Let's add a little bit of grassy wind. Hit play. Now I'm not getting any playback here, and this might be because my running man is still at, that's every frame. Let's try going to 20 for a second. But you see, I'm not getting the performance properly. And this might be an issue again with the playback and your RAM issues. So let's just toss in a play blast really quick and see if it does it properly. Doesn't seem to be playing properly. There you see what they look like on the play blast. All right, so let's choose something other than the hyacinth. The hyacinth may actually have a lock on it for behavior. Let's go back to our setting here, and let's just go with something easy to see here, like trees. Okay, and you see we got lots of crazy looking trees here. There's also one here called tree mesh, which gives us like trees that actually have a little bit of leaves and so on. And you see it's going to create a 3D brush. Let's just hold B, left mouse, and drag. And I'm just going to give it one drag. And you can see, just like that, it has built this nice large tree. Now, let's go back to our tree brush. Turbulence, I'll add in tree wind. Rewind and play. For some reason, I see it moving here, but it's not playing properly here in the settings. Let's try going back and changing that back over to play every frame. Now I'm noticing I get a little stack of coins when I come over here, play forward. Now if I chug through, for some reason the playback's not playback. What is this? Let's try turning off the cache. No. Alright, well I'll come back to this. There's some reason it's just not playing. This should blow in the wind. Honest to God, it should blow in the wind as if the tree is blowing in the wind. I'll get back to why the playback was changed with playback. Again, it could be also just be, again, my computer, but we're going to get into PaintFX much more detail later on as far as, you know, working with additional uses of the PaintFX. But for now, I want to focus a little bit more. Let me just hit enter there and delete. I want to focus a little bit more, though, on the creation of the tutorial, which is, okay, the neon sign. Okay, and here's some more information here, how to make live that allows you to draw directly on surfaces by making things live. Brush size, I said, if you hold in the B key, it allows you to drag to increase the brush. And applying a PaintFX brush, paint on surface, you can make the surface live to paint on surface, or you can apply a PaintFX to curves for creating neon strings. Choose brush effects type from the visor. Go to the drop-down menu for PaintFX, curves, and assign to curve. And I'm going to get to that, of course, in a second here when I describe how to create the neon sign. And this just gets into more detail. I just, you know, additional tricks and so on. But let's actually get to the tutorial here of creating this neon sign. Now, one of the things you're going to need, of course, is you're going to need to have some kind of graphic. Now, I've saved off this, and I'm going to show you a neat little tutorial using Adobe Illustrator, using the Live Paint tool to vectorize a graphic, and then how you can actually not only create geometry in Maya using an Adobe Illustrator vector, but also how to then create and apply the neon sign to that texture, or to that curve. So all I did was just save off an interesting graphic. Doesn't have to be too fancy here. Now let me go ahead to my folder. Oh, where's my Art Institute folder? Summer 2021, find course. And I'm going to my neon sign, and you can see here is actually, and I'll just call this I'll call this art, okay? Because this is what I'm going to convert. And I'm going to take that, cut that art, and place it again into the source images folder. That's where you want this stuff to occur from, right? In the project folder itself. Now, inside the brush here, okay, we're going to go to the neons just to test out the neon brushes that are there. These are under glows. See, and I got neon purple, neon yellow. I'll go with a neon blue maybe first here. And you see now, if I drag it, it's going to give me a path that I just drew physically with the pet brush, with the tool here. And you see, hey, look at that. That works. See how that's glowing? And I can even control more of that, again, by playing around with some of these other factors like global scale, right? That's going to affect it. And you see it's creating a glowing path. Now, what I can also do with this, though, is let's just create a curve. And I'll create a CV curve tool. Hit enter. Choose that curve, see, or that brush that I've selected, and right-click. Let's see if it allows us to do this here. Send favorite material, existing material. Okay, I thought maybe we could right-click it, but try and find apply effect. Where are you at? Let's see if they're back at rendering again. Paint line attributes. I'm trying to find here, where on earth is the PaintFX? All right, let me hit pause here. And we'll come right back to this. All right, we're back. Yes, I've managed to solve the problem. So again, if you want to apply a paint effect to a curve, like a neon sign or something like that, we choose the curve. We make sure we've got the brush selected. And then this is actually now located in it used to be in rendering. Now it's in modeling. And they change it all the time. And we're going to generate. You see, here's our PaintFX tools, make paintable, get brush. This is where this used to be called the visor. Now it's called generate under modeling menu set. And I'm just going to curve, utilities, and attach brush to curve. And you see what it's done now is it's attached that neon to the curve that I created. See that? And then we can render, we can see the glowing neon brush. All right, so what do we do though if we want to actually create an actual neon sign other than just, like coming here, create, and creating like some kind of like text or something like that. Which again, character generator. I'm just trying to figure out what to change all this stuff here. Again, it used to be create and text, but they changed all these. Okay, so let's do this the old school way as if you were working in Illustrator. I'm going to start by bouncing over to Illustrator, create new, because we all should have some pretty good understanding how Adobe Illustrator works, especially because now you can model using vectors. You can texture using vectors inside of Maya. It's not exactly what this class is about, but when I'm teaching modeling classes, I show them all the time that, curves or NURB curves or vector graphics, especially if you work in like Studio Max, it's a driving force of creating a lot of geometry. So I'm just going to start with something simple and stupid here. And I'm just going to write in the word text. Now let's come over here. Let's make this be much larger. Let's go ahead and have some fun and make a much fancier font. Just to show what the potential of this is. Let's go with Bauhaus. And I'll increase the size of it. All right, so I have just the word text here. And if I were to just flip it around, you see I can get it to be just the curve-based geometry. But if I right-click and create outlines to this, you can see that this is just vector graphic of the word text. Now, if I were to take that and save as an Illustrator file, we go to the correct folder here. Let's see here. Desktop, Tampa, Summer, Course, find the Neon Sign folder, find the Neon Project folder, find the Source Images folder, and I'll just type in the word text here. Okay, just as an Illustrator file. Now I can bounce back over here and find the import as an Illustrator object. See this here? AI file go, summer 2021, neon sign, source images, and there's the word text or the file that's an AI, and I open that. You see it actually failed. And one of the reasons why it failed there is because the default version of Illustrator is too advanced for Maya. So what we have to do is when we save this as, and we choose an Illustrator file, we actually have to change this version. I believe it's 8 or older. Yeah, because we don't want any compression or anything like that. So we want to use an older version of Illustrator for the file format. So it has no compression to it. Now, let's go ahead and create Illustrator object. Choose the word text AI file. And look at that right there. I'm actually going to do a modify center pivot really quickly just so we can get it to where it needs to be. And you see this now. What this has done is it's created a bevel option here, okay? And I can even go to face if I want to, double click, move it away a little bit, double click, move it away a little bit, double click, move it away a little bit, okay? See that right there? And I can even come in here now, go back to object mode, and I could do things like I can scale this to make it thicker. I can go into this bevel plus option here and choose different types of bevel, different types of depth. See, change the depth, change the bevel, change the type, increase the tolerance, do all these things. And what's cool is it has literally made this as an actual object inside of Maya. Go ahead and delete that though, because I want to have some more fun with this. Okay, this time I'm going to import that source image of that text. Let's go ahead and select up, up, up arrow to get the group. Go ahead and center pivot it. So that now you see I've brought in just the vector of that word text. See that? And what's cool about it by doing it this way, let's go ahead and center pivot all these. By the way, a great tool is the G tool. G is the shortcut in Maya for repeat last step. So if I center one, I can center multiple at the same time. Pretty easy to do that. Oops. This one got a little off. All right. So I brought in, that one got moved in the wrong direction. Probably because I did this in the perspective. Okay, so I got these all lined up here. Let me go ahead and turn off my grid. So another way we can do this, though, is I could select each of these, and I'm looking for the bevel emboss. Let's see, where's that going to be? Modify for bevel emboss, mesh. No. Curves. Bevel surfaces. Here it is, bevel plus. See this? And I choose that bevel plus, and you see it has done a bevel of that geometry. Now I'm going to come here, and instead of saying just surface bevel plus, I'll go option box. And this will allow me to create a standard default. So I could say, you know, hey, let's increase the width and the depth, and I'll go bevel. And now I can simply choose the next one in line and hit G, the next one in line, hit G, the next one in line and hit G. And so you see I've actually created geometry out of that vector of just the font of text. Now I'm going to take those, hold shift, slide them back a little bit. So you see I've offset them from the curve. Now I can create the curve. Okay, I've got the brush selected. Remember, this is actually now in the Generate, Curve Utilities, Attach Brush to Curve. And I can come over here and I can start to mess around with the thickness of that and whatnot. Now, what's cool about that now, I can get the brush or get the settings. Let's see. Get settings from the selected stroke. Select the next one here, Curve Utilities. Attach Brush to Curve. Let's just go ahead and select the next one here. Oops, come on. G. And the next one here, G. Now let's see what this looks like when we render it, is I should have blue neon on the outside of my actual geometry there. And the cool part is because once we actually get that, even though it doesn't look exactly correct here, see how this one actually looks like it's completely around, but this one's kind of spotty. See that? And this one's kind of spotty. Don't let that, you know, illusion kind of despair you, because it is going all the way around. In fact, if I was actually able to select all the PaintFX, I could actually modify, convert PaintFX to polygons right there. See? And now you can actually see the neon. See that? Modify, convert, PaintFX to polygons. I'll just go to G to repeat last step. G to repeat last step. And this should work out. Oh, it's a little spotty. And that can happen sometimes when, like I said, when the PaintFX brushes. Now remember, I used text from Illustrator here. The X looks great, but these kind of failed a little bit here. So let me just go ahead, see if I can generate a curve, attach brush to curve. Now that's just that's an error. We'll see if we can remediate that error here in a second. But in a nutshell, you see how I'm able to get this to kind of come in from Illustrator as a fancy kind of graphic using vector art. So let's go back to Illustrator here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place my art. Okay. Okay, maybe instead of placing, I should open it. Let's try opening it. All right. So I have all this fancy artwork here that I'm going to use for, I'm going to choose one of these. Maybe I'll choose this one in the center here to create my art. But this is actually known as the vector or image trace. You see it's right here. Black and white is fine because it's just black and white. If you're going to do color, it takes a little bit more work. Let's go ahead and trace. All right. And you see it has converted my JPEG to a vector image. Okay. And I can even turn on and off the white. And you're going to see that's going to be kind of important here, but I'm not going to get too deep into that right now. But to release it, we need to come down here and hit expand and ungroup. And you'll see what it has done is, you see there's all my background, which I don't want. So let's get rid of that, all that white. Really don't need the white unless I'm going to use the white, because this is actually going to work without having to create all that white. Let's go ahead and delete that. Delete that. So this is the one I'm going to use. I'm actually going to move it out of the way here so I can choose the white here. And I'm going to select same fill color to delete all the other white. So you see what it's come down to now. It's all these different pieces, right? And now I can simply place that in the center, File, Save As. I'll call this Art, Adobe Illustrator Save. But remember, choose an older version. 8, I think older than 9 will work. I'm going to keep with the legacy of 8. Okay, so I've now converted that to a vector. Now let's jump back over here to our Illustrator file, or I'm sorry, Maya file, and import it. Art, right, is the Illustrator file. Let's import that, and you see now it has brought all those in. Okay. Now I'm not going to center pivot at all these just because. And you see now we've got a variety of objects here. So I'm going to select the part that will represent the actual sign, much like that. And let's go ahead and do that surface bevel plus. And I'm going to go ahead and put wireframe on here so we can see what we're doing. And you see there's a couple of them here that are reversed, which I'll have to reverse the normals, right? See, because some of these actually did not work properly. So let's go ahead and double click. Some of them are working better than others. And this might even be a case where I may want to just have a simple sign instead of something quite so complex. Let's just select all this geometry and slide it back. Okay, so you can kind of see how we're going there. Yeah, these two are inverted, which basically means that this curve here needs to be reversed. Okay? So we can even do that here in the curves where I can say, hey, let's go ahead and reverse the curves. I should be able to do that with a rebuild, or here, reverse direction. And I'm going to do that to this one too. Curves, reverse direction. Now I'm going to choose the incorrect geometry and just delete it. And let's do these individually now. So I'll do this one. Remember, surface, Bevel plus. See, those work properly. Just click this guy and hit G, and this one hit G. And now you see they might need to be moved back a little bit, but they are properly in the right direction so that they are filled. See that? And this is kind of neat too, because you can even take like these two. Actually, is this one kind of... For some reason, that's grouped into it. Maybe I'll just take this one, move it to the front. I'll take this one, move it to the back, just to give it a little more interesting stepped kind of effect there. All right. Now, I'm going to select all that geometry I've just made in the bevel and just move it backwards a little bit, just so it's offset. Now remember, there's some very cool things we can do with this. Okay, because we can actually even put this into a layer and freeze it so I don't accidentally select it anymore for now. Let's go ahead and do that. Layer, create a layer from the selection, and let's go ahead and just turn on the R, so now it's just a reference and it won't accidentally be selected. And let's start to think about making this neon. Now you can see I could select 2 of these at a time even. Let's go ahead and highlight our neon blue, generate, curve utilities, attach brush to curve. Let's hit the render to see what that D looks like. And you see there's the D. Now, if you do that and that is too thick, hit the attribute editor and just change the global scale to something smaller. Maybe I'll go to a 6 instead of a 10. Okay? Now watch how cool this is. I can get the settings from selected stroke, and then back to generate, apply settings to selected stroke. And that now means I got a very similar size to the stroke of my neon. And now that I've done that, its memory is already in the clip there. I can go curve, attach brush to curve. Now you see, it's giving me that error, which means I should be able to take this curve, reverse direction, curve utility, attach brush to curve, and now it works properly. Let's go ahead with the N, curve utility, attach brush to curve. Again, if it's incorrect, just an undo, curves, reverse direction, and then go ahead and reapply, attach brush to curve. See? And then we get the proper way. Incorrect. Curve, reverse, reattach to curve, proper. Attach brush to curve, incorrect. Curve, reverse, generate, attach brush to curve. Okay. So, and that's just what's going on here, is that the curve direction is incorrect for actually applying this paint effect. So all we have to do is reverse that direction, and now I can hit the render, and you see I'm starting to get the illusion of the diner, like the neon sign, which is pretty neat looking. And I can go in there, right? I can select this, go to my neon blue here, go to the glow and change the glow color, go to the shading. You see it's currently blue. What if I turn that to being yellow? And you can see that's going to change it now to a yellow glow with a pink, or yellow color with a pink glow. I can get the settings. Okay. Get settings for selected stroke. And then come along, I'm just going to hold shift, select them all, generate, apply settings. And now they're all going to be that yellow value. We can even key the glow value and the illumination value so I can make it look like it's blinking off and on. Let's go ahead. modify, freeze transfer, no, not center pivot. Pivot. And so you see, I'm just designing my sign this way. Let's go ahead and have some more fun here. So I've got this big outline here. I've already got attach brush to curve. Let's see what color that came out. See, that's also that yellow, so let's go ahead and remove that attribute of that yellow. Let's go back to a blue. And I'll change my glow color here to be a little bit different than what it was, so that now this outer area has got this blue value. Maybe I'll come here and make it smaller even than 6. Again, get the settings from this stroke. G. Curve utilities, attach brush to curve. Again, undo, it's the wrong direction, so let's go ahead and reverse the direction. Now, when I did that, you notice something weird happened in the back, and that is, no, it actually looks pretty good. Okay. Let's do this one. Curve utilities, attach brush to curve, undo. Curve, reverse direction, and attach brush to curve. Okay. Now I'm noticing here, let me unlock my layer, that when I did that reverse, kind of move these out a little bit more. That. And let's see what we actually end up with now if I hit the render button. And you can see how we're getting our neon sign to kind of work now. Now neon's going to be affected by everything from lighting to the render settings to the environment that's there. But you can see I'm starting to build an actual 3-dimensional neon sign. Utilities, attach brush to curve. We could always come in here, by the way, and just physically, just with the brush selected, with the curve selected, come here. Okay. So we now have the star. So it's just an issue now of just keep going and going and going until you get your neon. Now again, I said, you don't have to make it this fancy, okay? We could also keyframe these things blinking on and off. So you could do really cool neon, where you've got some random, maybe it's like the old Vegas ones where you've got the go-go girl kicking her leg up, or the cowboy with his arm and his hat animating. But once we actually get to this, to get the best result from this, the best result, okay? With this selected, we're going to convert, again, PaintFX to polygons. And once you do that, in fact, what I can do here, just again, let's go ahead and re-reference our geometry. And let me go ahead and hide my curves. Should be able to put a box. That's now selecting all the neon and convert to a polygons with all of them selected. Or maybe one. So I'm just going and selecting all these PaintFX things I just built. So that they're no longer Trying to find my N. As you can see now we're kind of building this. Line it up a little bit better so it's offset. But you can see how we've got our sign basically getting built. Right? Now, let's go back to show curves again. Because in a lot of cases too, this is from a live trace in Illustrator, so the font is not going to be nearly as good as if I were to use, say, the text tool. The question, of course, is where is the text tool now? All right, found it. So when we're going to make text that's going to be better than this, because we're going to use Maya's True Type font tool. So we're going to recreate the Midnight Bowling and the Open 24 Hours, rather than relying upon the Illustrator version, which is probably not correct because it was just a live trace. I could even do this with the word diner. I could do this with stars. But to do this, we go to Polygon Modeling, and we grab the text tool. Okay? And you see, it just drops in by default this 3D type, right? Well, this is going over here now, and we're going to write in here. And we're going to say, we'll say Open 24H. Let's see, does it let me do caps? OPEN space 24H. Now I can make it smaller. You see this? And it's automatically building this as physical geometry. I can come in here, I can change fonts, right? I can make them bold. I can make them italicized. You see the generator geometry is currently making, see, create curves from type. If I hit that, it will not only make me the geometry, but what really I want is not the extrusion, right? I want the curves. So that now, you see I got the curves there, but I don't really need the geometry. Let's go up and modify center pivot. Let's go ahead and hit the space bar here, change our viewport here so we can literally make it fit where we want it to go. Okay. Space bar, frame. There we go. Up, up, up. Now again, don't worry about the curves because they don't render. You see, if I move this back, I can put it where it belongs now. Let's go ahead and choose another neon. Maybe I'll grab this purple. And generate curve utilities, attach brush to curves. Let's see if they all worked by hitting the render button. And you see there we have Open 24 Hours. So, and then of course you'd want to come in here now and do your convert, and whatnot. See, let's go ahead, hide the curves. And modify, convert, PaintFX to polygons. Okay. So true type text works better than, say, the Adobe Illustrator. Now, if you're doing a graphic, an icon, something that's pictorial, yeah, you might have to do the Adobe Illustrator, do a live trace, and you might actually have to clean up that vector, where if you go to do the geometry of the PaintFX and you get spikes in it, you might have to simplify that down a little bit. Let's go ahead and show NURBS curves again. Go ahead and hit my space bar so I can see everything here. Turn off my grid. Okay, and now Midnight Bowling. So again, where did we find the text? Under Polygon Modeling, Text Tool, Midnight Bowling. Let's go ahead and find, looks like it needs to be italicized. And a little bit more fancy. Let's try modern. Now see, some of these fonts it does not like. See, I'm trying to find one that actually says Midnight Bowling, but also gives me an italicized. There we go. Go back to the text, make it smaller. I can even choose put a space bar in there to offset it so it's under the D. I can choose the separation of the space, kerning, tracking, space width scale, all these paragraph settings. Let's go ahead and go back to the geometry here, because again, I'm going to want curves here, and I'm going to want probably neon. So let's go ahead, create the curves. Back to our perspective window. Shrink that down. See, it's going to give me the curves as well. Center pivot it. So you see, it's just a little bit easier to do it this way with the text tool when it comes to fancier text. Just because. Now if I want to, I could get rid of the old stuff, right? I could clean up and get rid of the stuff. Or I could have done that just in Illustrator if I knew I was going to use Maya text instead. Okay, that's pretty good. Picture from, all right. Let's pivot it again. And again, you may want to actually put all these things in separate layers. Let's go ahead back to our layer and let's freeze this and right click and add it to our previous layer so that now, okay, go ahead and choose that purple we have here. Generate, curve utilities, attach brush to curves. Let's see here, G. You just see, though, that how much better when you use the type, it knows the direction to create that vector, whereas in Adobe Illustrator, it's just trying its best to vectorize it, to convert it. So you could keep going with this. You can just build upon it. You could start creating some simple shaders to apply to the actual geometry. You can keyframe, you know, some kind a little bit more of a performance, where you would have, say, the you know, something blinking on and off. Let's see how this actually works right now. So the render button, right, and you can see how a lot of this has to do with the distance too. It has to do with the size by default. Remember, we're currently working here in a little HD. It's going to have a lot to do with the quality, you know, that we're rendering at. And usually the further away you get from neon or from a glow, you see the glow is a little too much. And that's because we got neon on top of neon. So one thing you could always do here, right, come here, get the setting from that stroke, go into this setting here, which is, again, you can see because I converted it to polygon, the glow value, see, might be a little high. Plus, because when you convert it to polygon, if you look, by converting these to polygons, it's going to make a shader for all those duplicates. And you can see just how overdone it is. So you can come in and then you can customize these, bring down the incandescence so it's not nearly as much, bring down the glow. Incandescence is self-illumination, and then customize this once you get there. But the point simply being is the PaintFX brush of the glow neon not only creates geometry, right, which is just going along the tube of the curve, it's also applying basic elements of texture, glow, incandescence, and you start to get the idea of how to build these neon signs. Now again, because this neon sign isn't really much of a performance, right, unless I actually start adding some keyframes or something like that, I probably want to go and turn down the amount of glow, because when you convert it to a polygon, you can see in the distance, it's just way too much incandescent, way too much glowing. So this is kind of coming in here back to your hypershade here and saying, okay, well, I don't need, you know, maybe I'll choose one neon blue and turn down the values of the incandescence and turn down the special effect of the glow, maybe turn on ray tracing, you know, something like that. And then take that one now and apply it to all the others. Believe it or not, glow is pretty still. I just named it neon blue, and now I can come here and get rid of all the other neon blues by simply highlighting them and deleting them. Call this yellow neon. Again, bring down the incandescence. Bring down the glow, because it worked great when it was in PaintFX form, but now that we're in polygon form, it's using a lot of these render attributes. So I'll just get rid of these others, these extra ones that were just way too intense. And now it's just an issue now of finding what lost its texture, which should be green by now. Yeah, see, that's lost it. All I gotta do here is just tell it to have, there we go. So this was neon blue. Which of these that I just converted does it need to be? Okay? And we can go and call that the surface material. So it's a lot to keep up with, but you see now by turning down all those extreme glowing ones, now all I have to do is come back in here, and you see it just works a little bit better. It was just too much when I converted to polygons. So that's in a nutshell. Like I said, I'd accept a still render, or if you want to actually just, you know, fly a camera past here, you know, so you could just simply have it just tumble with a keyframed camera. If you've got some animation, of course, keyframe some animation, where I could have like the D blink off and on, and maybe 24 hours blinks off and on just by keyframing the glow or keyframing that incandescent value. It's a little bit to kind of keep up with here. Have some fun with it, like I say, and you can imagine there's so much more you can do with these PaintFX brushes, you know, trees, whatever it happens to be, right? I could come here and I could say, yeah, you know what this is missing? It's missing some bamboo. Or it's missing a, where's my tree mesh? Let's put a couple palm trees next to it, right? Remember, even those need to be converted, PaintFX to polygons. Let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, and I don't have any lights on in the scene yet. But you get an idea of what it's looking like there. See that? So PaintFX, lots of fun. Just be careful, because the one thing you never ever want to do here, if I go to grasses, for example, a lot of people think, oh, PaintFX, grass, yeah. Let's just grab this grass here and let's just paint the whole thing. This is bad news. You don't need to do this, because you can actually create an entire field of grass just with one stroke. See that? This is where we start getting into problems, because now it's extremely heavy. Go ahead and turn off my wireframe so you can actually see what we got here. Textures. There, see? Kind of see what we're kind of starting to build with PaintFX. Lots of fun, cool things. Remember, turn it in as a video file. Stills are fine. Play Blast won't really work unless you really start to focus on performance of it all. But try your best, and I look forward to seeing what you can do with this neon sign. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.